If you're struggling with menopause, has anybody told you about the clinical trial that was done in Seoul in North Korea with Neroli essential oil? If not, pin your ears back. This is exciting stuff. Now, if we haven't met before, my name is Elizabeth Ashley. I'm a clinical aromatherapist, an author and an educator specifically about spiritual essential oils and how they affect the personality and how we feel. So, menopause. We don't talk about it anywhere near enough, do we? But it's estimated that over 75% of women experience some menopausal symptoms, with over a third of those classing them as severe symptoms, and for some poor women those can go on for as long as 7 years. So here in the UK, approximately 13 million women are going through perimenopause or menopause at the moment, and that's about a third of the women across the world globally. So I think this is really, really important that we talk about this. The menopause can bring so many different symptoms, can't it? I guess the one that we think about most is called vasomotor symptoms. And basically that is when the estrogen drops out. Estrogen controls a part of the brain called the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus has several jobs, but in particular it deals with stress, it deals with how we wake up, and it also does thermoregulation, so the heat of our body. And so when the estrogen drops down, there's nothing controlling that anymore. And so that's why we get hot flushes, night sweats, our mood's off, and most of us don't sleep anymore. So anything that we can do to support estrogen is really, really important. And there's lots of research now that shows that inhaling an essential oil can have really big effects. So let me tell you about this trial. So it started off with 92 women, but because a couple of them were ill, a couple didn't do all of the treatments they were supposed to, by the end of it we're down to 63 women. So that's a relatively small study size, but the results that they saw were marvellous. So the women were split up into 3 different groups. So one group only had almond oil. The next group had almond oil with some neroli oil in it. And incidentally, I'll go through the protocol with you at the end. But they only had 0.1% dilution in their blend. And then the other group had 0.5% dilution, so 0.5% dilution in their blend. And they were asked to inhale the blend twice a day, at 10 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock in the evening. And specifically they were given little 1 ml bottles of each one was a little treatment. So they had 10 little bottles, so 10 ml of oil was the whole study. So they had 10 little bottles, and they were told, right, get yourself a little pad or a tissue, pour that oil onto your tissue, put it 30 centimeters away from you, so that's like a school ruler, isn't it? 30 centimeters away from you, and just breathe. Inhale slowly and deeply for 5 minutes, doing that twice a day. So they had quite a lot of feedback things that they had to fill in. So first of all, they had a questionnaire. It's called a MENOPAUSal scale. So it's about how they felt their quality of life was at the beginning and then at the end. They took saliva tests to test hormones. I'll tell you the results of that in a minute. They also had their heart rate and their blood pressure checked. And then they also had a questionnaire where they had like a scale where they had to put a mark to say, what's your sexual desire like now? Because loss of sexual desire, of course, as we know, is definitely a thing with menopause. So remember, we're only going 5 days. So they filled in their questionnaire at the beginning, they filled in the questionnaire at the end, they had blood pressure and saliva test done at the beginning and at the end. They weren't told which group they were in, so it was a double blind study. So they knew that they were going to be inhaling oil, but they didn't know if it had neroli in or it didn't have neroli in. And yeah, so what was interesting was at the end of it, they all said, I feel better. So it didn't matter if they had the neroli in or not, just the process of doing something, feeling like they had some control in what they were doing, made a difference. But the neroli really made a difference. So even the small low concentration 0.1%, that group saw a difference, felt better. And I'll talk about their specific scores in a minute. But the ones who felt most better, significantly better, were the 0.5%. So blood pressure, first of all. What they tested, they looked at the systolic and the diastolic. So, you know, when you have your blood pressure, you have your top number and your small number, don't you? So your systolic is the maximum amount of pressure that's exerted on the ventricles. Those are the lower part chambers of your heart in contraction. So we want that to be quite low, right? So pushing in. Diastolic is the minimum amount of pressure exerted when it's at rest. So interestingly, you look for different things based on somebody's age, but the older we get, the more important it is that the systolic number is lower. A higher systolic is like an indicator of poor health as we get older. What they were able to see, that in all the women that had the neroli, both their diastolic and their systolic readings were lower. So all aspects of their blood pressure had fallen. When they tested their saliva, they were able to see that each of the women had higher levels of estrogen. Remember, these are postmenopausal women, so they shouldn't have any estrogen, but their estrogen had gone up. And it's the inhalation of the essential oil we know causes the body to start creating that estrogen again. So the estrogen in their saliva had gone up. Excuse me. The cortisol, though, the cortisol had gone down. Cortisol is a stress hormone. When we're stressed, we secrete, because the HPA axis, hypothalamus, the thing we were talking about at the beginning, says to the pituitary, send out stress hormones, which sends messages to the adrenals, and the adrenal says we need to respond to the challenge in front of us by secreting hormones, including cortisol. So if we see a lower indication of cortisol in the saliva, that means the body was less stressed. Through that 5 weeks, the body had learned to be less reactive to stress. In other words, the mood had stabilized. So heart rate had gone down, mood had stabilized. On their MENOPAUSal questionnaire, all of them said, I feel less stress. I feel I'm more in control of things and I'm sleeping better. They also said on their little line that went up, yeah, you know what? I've got more sex drive than I had. So this is just inhaling a simple essential oil for 5 days. So what I always say to people is it's really easy to inhale an essential oil. What's not easy is keeping the mind going so you don't get distracted. And so what I've done is I've put together a little meditation for you to do. So if you click the link, it will take you through to your neroli meditation to just focus your mind and relax while you're doing your inhalation work and hopefully doing some real good for your menopause symptoms. I really hope that it helps. Please do put us a comment in the comments if you find that it helps, or even if you find that it doesn't. If you've got any other tips for ladies who have found their way here because they're suffering the same as you are, anything that you found has helped, please put it in the comments. So yeah, click your meditation, and I hope to be with you quite a lot over the next few weeks as you inhale your Neroli essential oil.